It doesn't exactly take a keen eye for investigation to see that I love role-playing games, and as any RPG fan will tell you, the old games are the best games. So you'd figure I'd be in heaven with this new popularity that old-school turn-based RPGs have found in the independent gaming scene, but to be honest, most of these retro-style titles leave me wanting. It seems like a lot of these independent devs really love the role-playing genre, but lack a complete understanding of the little intricacies that make up a solid RPG. Well, Something Classic Games are fresh off a very successful Kickstarter campaign, and they're looking to buck that trend. And since they've been nice enough to provide me with a copy of their flagship title, Shadows of Adam, I can take the microscope to their supposed RPG street cred. Can Shadows of Adam rise above the nearly infinite amount of subpar indie RPGs out there? Well, I'm Jared, and this is Trash Classics. In Shadows of Adam, you play as, well, I guess there's really four main characters. See, Kellen here may be the leader of the party, but the story is split pretty evenly between our little motley crew. And that story starts out innocently enough. After a devastating conflict known as the Wraith War tore the world apart, people are living in relative peace now. But a small village known as Adam choose to isolate themselves, fearing the possible return of such a war. Since magic ended when the war did, the people of Adam are more than a little surprised when a young girl shows up and is able to wield the long-lost power. And they take this news about as well as you would expect an isolated group of doomsday preppers would. And now that life is turning more and more unpleasant for the small town, Kellen and his friend Azrael are tasked with venturing down into the thorny wastelands in hopes of getting to the bottom of the recent strange events. After finding a book in what seems like the spirit of Kellen's long-lost father, the group is sent on a journey to collect shards of crystals. Not sure I've heard that one before. Now, for most of you, this may seem like a pretty boilerplate RPG story, but the real focus in SOA is on solid character building. Throughout the game, I wasn't exactly on the edge of my seat waiting to see where the story would take me, but I was totally invested in these four main characters thanks to some truly expressive dialogue and their really interesting backstories. No matter what's going on, our protagonists never shy away from discussing things amongst themselves, and I'd say that these are some of the best scenes in the game. Each party member has a really unique personality, and the game's writer was able to let that shine through without beating us over the head with stereotypical archetypes. As far as turn-based role-playing games go, Shadows of Adam's mere 12 to 15 hour runtime may seem like a downside, but that's definitely not the case. SOA trims all the RPG fat you might be used to and makes for a condensed but utterly enjoyable experience. Enjoying the story is one thing, but an RPG lives and dies by its combat, so how does SOA hold up on that front? Well, I'm happy to say that combat here is a masterful retread of those classic turn-based RPGs of yesterday. This game's creators were obviously big fans of old SNES-era JRPGs, but more importantly, they also were talented enough to properly emulate such a classic style. Foregoing random encounters, enemies are represented on screen, but instead of having them move around and giving the player the opportunity to avoid fights, monsters are often placed in such a way that they can be avoided. Once actually in a fight, mechanics can be pretty simple, but don't let that fool you. Combat here is damn near perfect. Outside of your typical physical attack, item, and escape options, each character also has special abilities that can be used at the expense of AP. Instead of having an ever-increasing pool of AP that scales with level ups, like more traditional JRPGs, SOA works in percentages, which means no matter what level you're on, each ability will always cost the same percentage of AP. This seemingly simple decision keeps combat feeling interesting, since getting to a high level and spamming low-cost abilities is never going to be an option. And then there's the added benefit of keeping later, stronger abilities from feeling cheap, since no matter what level you're at, they're always going to cost a large portion of your AP. Further increasing your strategic options is the fact that you gain a small amount of AP back after turns or enemy kills. These two systems complement each other perfectly and leaves combat feeling fresh despite the lack of more complicated features like those found in other turn-based RPGs. Outside battle, SOA feels like your favorite 16-bit RPG, but with all the fat trimmed off. The story will guide you through a pretty linear set of events, but somehow keeps from feeling like it's constrained. Old folks like myself will be overjoyed to see that there's a world map to explore, but it's a bit of a tease since you won't be able to really look around until the end of the story. And speaking of the end of the story, that's another sight for sore eyes. Most indie RPGs I've played lately have completely forgotten about late game optional content, so it was nice to see extra dungeons and towns are explorable just before the final encounter. Like I said earlier, there are no random encounters, and since monsters stand in place at key areas, it's easy to have flashbacks of Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. But don't let that sour you. Even though this was jarring at first, I kinda grew to like it, and since the game is balanced around this idea, it makes boss fights more about smart planning and tactics, and less about mindless level grinding. And since I've started complimenting the game endlessly, let's keep that train going by giving major credit to the game's puzzles. Like I said in my crosscode review, I don't exactly love puzzles in my RPGs, but I understand why they're there. Well, add Shadows of Adam to the small list of games that have puzzles I actually enjoyed solving. Not really sure why, but these kind of position-based head-scratchers seem to be my cup of tea. As for the rest of the experience, well, you RPG fans should already know what to expect, and in a way, it's this rigid adherence to the rules that makes SOA so charming. With all these indie RPGs fighting for attention on Steam, doing something different with the genre is one of the best ways to stand out from the crowd, but Shadows of Adam is stern in its reverence to the old ways, and sometimes that can be just as refreshing as a radical new direction. As far as graphics go, well, I shouldn't have to say much. You've been watching this footage, and if you don't think these 2D sprites are beautiful, well then I think you may have come to the wrong channel. It's clear the developer Something Classic Games has some amazingly talented 2D artists in their midst, but if there's one complaint I have, it's that text is scaled to your full screen resolution using some kind of bilinear filter, meaning it can look soft and fuzzy when compared to the sharp sprite work. And since we're on the subject of complaints, I'd like to point out that I experienced a couple of glitches in my playthrough. Nothing game-breaking, and it was mostly limited to visual problems like overlapping status effects making some character animations go crazy. As weird as it sounds though, these little glitches also remind me of the old 2D RPGs that this game emulates. As far as 2D sprite-based callbacks to classic JRPGs go, Shadows of Adam is in a league of its own. Aside from pulling off the right look and feel, it also has some awesome writing, and by the end of the game I actually gave a damn about my characters, which is really saying something nowadays. It may not be the 60-hour epic I would have liked, but what's here is a trimmed down and focused experience that had me glued to my monitor. Its lovable characters, refined combat, and beautiful sprite art has it leading the way as one of my favorite games this year. Right now it's sitting at about $15 on Steam, and to any classic RPG fan out there, I'd say this is a guaranteed smart buy. As for you guys looking to dip your toes in the proverbial RPG pool, this will likely serve as a great starting point, a gateway RPG if you will. Well guys, that's about it for me, but as you know, it's dangerous to go alone, so take Shadows of Adam, a great RPG, and a trashed classic. Hey guys, thanks for swinging by. If you like what you saw here, go ahead and click that like button to let YouTube know I exist. Also, I have a Patreon, so check that out if you feel like helping. And if you like Shadows of Adam, check out my friend Daria Plays RPGs. If it wasn't for her, I would have forgotten all about this game, so go give her some love.